How is Ryan Suter doing in his first season with the Dallas Stars? How is Jason Robertson doing in his sophomore season in the NHL? Plus, what do the Wild need to do to beat the Dallas Stars tonight? We look at that and more today on Locked on Wild.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a special crossover edition of Locked on Wild and Locked on Stars, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making both Locked on Wild and Locked on Stars your first listen every day. And just as a reminder, both shows are free and available wherever you listen to podcasts. On today's episode of Locked on Wild and Locked on Stars, we take a look at the matchup tonight between the Wild and the Stars, as both myself, Seth Topol, and Dane Lewis trade questions for each team before taking a look at the matchup a little more in depth. My name is Seth Topol, host of Locked on Wilds, and happy to be joined by the host of Locked on Stars, Dane Lewis, for today's episode. Dane, how's it going?
It's going good, Seth. I'm glad that we could cross over. I'm excited for this matchup. It feels like forever since these two teams have matched up, and it's always fun to watch these two teams go at it. I feel like any Central Division game is always fun to watch, but especially with the two teams in green in the Central Division.
Yeah, it's a fun rivalry with especially the Stars, North Stars tie-in that goes way back. So always fun for these two teams to square off. I thought since Dallas is the road team here today, we could start with some Dallas related questions. And so I got to ask, obviously there's a fairly notable free agent who is playing for the Stars this year that was playing for the Wild for the last several seasons, Ryan Suter, who gets his chance to return to the Xcel Energy Center as a road player. So I got to ask, how has Suter looked so far this season?
Ryan Suter has looked okay, I feel like is kind of the simple answer. He isn't necessarily dragging the team down by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not, taking this team to new heights, obviously. I think he's just a guy that kind of knows his role, playing similar to how Joe Pavelski played when he joined the team from San Jose a few seasons ago. Just a veteran guy that, is looking to, maybe have one or two more playoff runs, make an attempt at winning the Stanley Cup. Obviously, the Stars still have a long way to go to get to that level. But Ryan Suter's playing all right. In their most recent game on Tuesday night against Detroit, he actually scored his second goal of the season. So not a whole lot of goals from Ryan Suter, which I know isn't too surprising. He definitely is more of a facilitator at the blue line and also, just more of a defenseman at the end of the day. But I think he's a guy that, at the end of the day is a good influence for the younger defensemen on the team like Yanni Hakanpää and especially Miro Heiskanen, who's having a nice season himself. But I don't think it hurts to have the veteran presence of Suter on the team with guys like John Klingberg, Esa Lindell. But he's playing all right. He's doing pretty well, all things considered. I know a lot of Stars fans weren't necessarily thrilled about the signing, but I don't think anyone is too upset with how he's played so far this season.
Obviously, Jason Robertson in the Calder Trophy conversation all the way through to the end of the year last year. How has he done so far here in his sophomore season after having a really nice rookie campaign last year?
Jason has done really, really well so far this season. He didn't get to play the first few games of the season. He was dealing with some injuries. I'm not necessarily sure off the top of my head what the injuries were, but he did not travel on Dallas's 4-game road trip to start the season. But ever since he's been able to play, he's looked really good. Health doesn't really seem to be an issue as of right now. The goals aren't necessarily pouring on kind of like they were last season, but I think, that he's having to find his groove within the offense, and the Stars offense as a whole has been a little lackluster up until the past week or so. But I think he, Joe Pavelski, and Roope Hintz, who are all on that first line for Dallas most nights, they're all kind of starting to find their rhythm. Jason Robertson found the net twice in Dallas's last game against Detroit. And Roope Hintz, also on that line, like I mentioned, has scored in 3 straight games. So Jason's looking really good, and the guys around him, whenever he's on the ice, are also starting to pick things up. And so they're starting to provide some offense for Dallas, which, like I said, has been an issue through the first about 15 games of this season so far.
I want to ask about the goalie situation as well for the Stars. Obviously, Braden Holtby and Anton Hudobin have been the ones that have started the most of the games, and John Edinger also getting a start as well. Have any of those guys separated themselves as kind of the go-to starting goalie for the Stars so far this year?
Man, it is. I can't really say for certainty that someone has. I feel like if someone's gotten close to there, it's been Braden Holtby. To start the season, he looked really, really sharp. Looked really good. Kind of looked like the way that he played back when he was with the Washington Capitals, and obviously won a Stanley Cup and a Vezina Trophy there, and was starting to show some glimpses of his days with the Capitals. But then we started playing some better teams. Our defense kind of started letting more pucks get closer to the net, and eventually those pucks went in the net. And now he's currently dealing with an injury. He's day to day on the Stars roster, so he hasn't played. I think it's been 2 or 3 games since we've last seen him. Anton Hudobin has had some nice performances as well. Really picked up his game over the past few go rounds. His first game of the season was a loss to the Ottawa Senators, so definitely not an ideal start to the season for Anton. But he's really picked things up, and Jake Ottinger, like you said, has thrown himself into the mix as well. Got his first start on Tuesday against the Red Wings. Looked really good. Only gave up 2 goals, saved I think 28 shots. So it's been kind of hard to decide, who is the guy in the crease for the Stars. But I think if I had to pick one guy to kind of rock with, for the rest of the season, and if the playoffs were to start today, and if Dallas were in the playoffs, and I had to pick a guy to start, it would probably be Braden Holtby at this point in time.
Has there been any player who has flown under the radar so far this season, having a sneaky good start to the year for Dallas?
Yeah, there's quite a few guys because I think so often just with sports in general, not just hockey, it's easy for any spectator and even guys like us that do podcasts or guys that cover teams in the media to look at the numbers and say, oh, the numbers define how well a guy's playing. And sometimes that's true. You look at goals, assists, points, things like that. But I don't think it all relies on the numbers. And there's quite a few guys that have played well for this Stars team, even if their numbers aren't necessarily showing it. And I think one of those guys that comes to mind is one of our other free agent acquisitions from the offseason, and that is Luke Glendening, who was with the Detroit Red Wings for his entire career up until this past offseason. He's just been, like you said, a sneaky guy that kind of flies under the radar at times, doesn't necessarily get a lot of goals. I think he has 3 or 4 so far this season, but a guy that's really valuable in the faceoff circle and a guy that's also really valuable on the penalty kill. The Stars penalty kill has been a little wishy-washy so far this season, but when it's at its best, it's normally when guys like Glendening are on the floor. Another guy that Dallas brought in, similar to Suter and similar to Michael Raffle as well. Just some veteran guys that kind of, know their role on whatever team they need to be on, guys that are coachable and guys that are going to do, what it takes to put their team in the best position to win and let the more star-studded players of the game do their thing. And they'll, if they need to make the pass or, go fight for the puck in the corner, guys that aren't afraid to get their hands dirty and do whatever they need to do to put the team in the best position to win. So number 11, Luke Glendening, a guy to definitely be on the lookout for in tonight's matchup.
Perfect. Tell you what, we'll flip it, and I will allow Dane to pepper me with some wild questions here as we get ready for tonight's matchup between the Wild and the Stars. The special Locked On Wild, Locked On Stars crossover episode continues next. BetOnline.ag is back, and they are better than ever. They have a new web interface for the start of the basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline.ag remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. So head over to their new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive that welcome bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline.ag is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline.ag, where the game starts. Continuing today's episode of Locked On Wild and Locked On Stars. Again, thank you for making Locked On Wild and Locked On Stars your first listen every day. Seth Topol joined by Dane Lewis. And Dane, the floor is yours. Any Wild-related questions you have, I am an open book.
All right. Since you asked me a Calder candidate related question, I'll go ahead and flip the script on you as well. Kirill Kaprizov, obviously, a guy that Stars fans know because he was in contention and eventually won the Calder Trophy last season. Had a phenomenal rookie year. How has he done so far? And what would you say is something that he's done exceptionally well so far this season for this Wild team?
Well, I think the thing that he has done well so far has been taking additional attention that other teams are throwing his way. You look at the numbers, and obviously, I think a lot of fans and a lot of people that cover or follow the Minnesota Wild would like to see a better output in terms of scoring for Kirill Kaprizov. Some of that has been due to just outstanding play by opposing goalies. He's had a lot of good opportunities that just haven't gone in the net so far this season. There have been other instances in which he becomes the focal point of opponents, and rightfully so. He should be as one of the Wild's better players on their roster. But teams have really schemed to try to take him out of the play, and that results in, as soon as he touches the puck, there are usually two skaters that meet him immediately. Um, and so that has led to, a lot of times he simply does not have the avenues that he had last year to be able to try to score or to create opportunities for his teammates. The other thing has been, the line around him has struggled to stay on the ice, and the Wild have kind of mixed pieces together just to try to get that optimal fit with him. So there are a lot of different things that have kind of come into play so far this year. It does seem as though at points he hasn't had that same gear that he had last year, and I'm sure some of that stems from frustration. Some of it stems from what the opposing teams are doing to him. But the thing that Kirill always has done best is just his ability to have these otherworldly passes, and he can anticipate where teammates are going to be before they know they're going to be there. So he's had some circus level passes so far this year that have led to assists and goals for teammates. And you feel like at some point his production is going to get back to the level that it was at last year. We just haven't seen it yet, and that's kind of been the common theme for this Wild team. Is that despite the fact that they are 10-5, I don't feel like they've played their best hockey by any stretch yet. And so when Kirill starts to kind of heat up, when the rest of this team really starts to play their best hockey, this is going to be a really, really tough team for anybody to contend with once all of the wheels hit the ground at the same time.
Yeah, you mentioned the 10-5 start for this Wild team so far. Obviously, off to a nice start this season. A top near the, I believe, second currently in the Central Division. A Central Division that maybe isn't shaping out how a lot of people have thought it would. You look at Colorado kind of sitting near the bottom, Nashville sitting near the top three as of right now, but just with Minnesota's hot start, what would you say is the overall strength of this team? You say they haven't played their best hockey yet, but what is something that the entire team has done well so far through the early stages of this season to put them where they're at right now?
I think it's the depth. I think this team just has a lot of guys that are plug and play in pretty much any situation. Ryan Hartman, leading goal scorer for the team so far, has, I believe, played with every single teammate on a line um, so far this season. He has been a top line center. He's been a second line wing. He's been a third line center. He's been a fourth line wing. He just is able to slot in and play wherever the team needs him to, and that can be said for a bunch of other guys throughout the lineup as well. Despite the fact that you look at Kirill Kaprizov and Kevin Fiala, and they both have 2 goals apiece, other guys have stepped up to kind of fill that void. Um, Ryan Hartman, Marcus Foligno has had a strong start to the season, and so the Wild are clicking on the Wild are clicking and are playing, at a pretty good clip. 10-5 is a good start, and they're doing so without the big pieces really having gotten rolling yet, because they have so many other guys that can step in and can get the job done. And We've seen that through a lot of their comeback wins this season. It's been, the other guys that have been able to step up and get it done. Joel Eriksson Ek with a hat trick against the Winnipeg Jets to win that game. Ryan Hartman has a couple of game winners so far this year, including the game tying goal against the Pittsburgh Penguins with like 2 seconds left in regulation. So this team is very deep, and they got a lot of guys that are capable of making big plays. And so far, a lot of those guys have made a lot of big plays to start the season.
Yeah, that's great. It's really interesting, like I said, to see how this division is shaping out, and always fun to hear from you guys that cover these other teams in the division to hear about all the success because down here in Dallas we're a little behind on that, but definitely finding our way. And kind of the next question I have, one you asked me as well. Who's a guy that another under the radar guy for this Wild team that maybe Stars fans might not know about, but that they should keep an eye on in this matchup?
I will give you two, and it'll be basically for the same reasons. I'm going to go with Brandon Duhaime and Rem Pitlick. Rem Pitlick, a former Nashville Predator, who recorded his first 3 goals of his career against the Seattle Kraken on Saturday. And him and Duhaime both have just we're going to go out there and we're going to give it everything we've got type of a mentality on the ice. Duhaime is a great asset as a speedster for this team, and has really helped create this bottom 6 that is as good as anybody's got in the entire NHL. So those guys have been really, really good and really important to what the Wild have been doing so far this season, and that's only going to continue as the season goes. So I would say those would be 2 names that a lot of fans throughout the NHL probably have not heard yet, but a lot of people, after having seen them play, are very impressed with what they're able to do and what they bring to the table. So those are definitely 2 guys to watch for in tonight's matchup, because they're going to be making the plays that maybe don't show up in the box score, but still are very important to either the win or the overall outcome in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are some of the most important guys on the team in the NHL, the guys that, set up the guys that get the points.
Exactly. Well, tell you what, let's finish up by taking a look at the matchup. We'll look at some key areas and how both teams match up. Final segment of today's crossover episode of Locked On Wild and Locked On Stars is next. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild and Locked On Stars. Thank you once again for making both shows your first listen every day. Seth Topal and Dane Lewis previewing tonight's matchup between the Wild and the Stars. And Dane, I want to start on special teams as we look at how this matchup could potentially play out tonight. Just looking at the numbers, Dallas with a power play percentage over 28%. The Wild's currently at 17%, so a little better clip power play wise for the Stars. Have you seen, have you been impressed with what Dallas has been able to do on the power play so far this year?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been one of the better surprises from this Stars team over the past several weeks, especially to start the season whenever they played their first 4 games on the road. I don't know. I can't remember now, but I don't think they scored a single power play goal then. If they did, it might have just been 1 or 2. It was a huge issue for the team. The penalty kill was doing really well. The power play, not so much. And now it almost seems like the script has flipped. I believe Tuesday ended a 6-game power play streak for the Stars where they were getting at least 1 goal. Granted, they only had 1 power play opportunity on Tuesday night, so not the same amount of looks that they've had, but it's been a really nice surprise over these past few games, even the games that the Stars have been losing. Nice to see that the power play is finding a way to be successful, because often a lot of times games can be decided on special teams on both sides of the ice. But especially a team like Dallas that is more certainly a defensive-minded team, where goals can sometimes be hard to come by. It's nice to see Joe Pavelski especially has been really, really nice on the Dallas power plays. He's aging super well. He continues to get older, but still continues to put up really, really nice numbers. Miro Heiskanen and John Klingberg at the blue line in those power plays, either setting up really nice looks for other guys or just putting the puck on net. and someone's hopefully there to pick up a rebound or pick up a block shot. So been really, really impressed with the Stars on the power play. They're still looking to translate some of that mojo over to the 5-on-5 units, but we'll take what we can get with this Stars team.
On the penalty kill, obviously both teams pretty comparable in terms of penalty kill numbers. From a Wild standpoint, my thought is that the Wild's penalty kill numbers don't look great because of the sheer volume in which teams have gone on the extra attack against the Wilds. Is that a similar situation with the Stars? To explain kind of where their penalty kill is at.
Yeah, I would absolutely say so. And I think some of the games it's been cleaned up just a little bit, but it's still, there's moments where we're just committing dumb penalties, and not only are the penalties themselves just like inexcusable or avoidable, it's the guys that are committing the penalties. It's oftentimes a lot of our veteran guys. I know Jamie Benn, the captain of the team, has been in the penalty box, a few too many times. Joe Pavelski has found his way there. John Klingberg, a guy that's important for the penalty kill. Luke Glendening, Michael Raffle. I feel like it's one thing if you see a younger guy or maybe a guy that isn't super important to the penalty kill, commit, tripping or holding, something like that. You don't want to see any penalty, but if someone's going to commit it, you want it to be someone that isn't necessarily a huge key player on the penalty kill. And there was a game a few weeks ago against Vancouver that Dallas really lost because of all the penalties they committed. And Vancouver's power play, I don't know if it's gotten any better now, but during that game was like bottom 3 in the league, I think, in power play percentage, and they looked like the best unit in the league that night. And it was just due to the amount of penalties. But you say that's been an issue for Minnesota as well. So we'll see how that shapes out as the game goes on tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty easy to tell early on what kind of game we're going to have, because the Wild have been bitten so far this year by slow starts in which they may spot a team, and spot a team maybe isn't the right word, but fall behind by 1 or 2 goals because the other team comes out of the gate firing, and the Wild just have not quite gotten to that gear yet. So that's obviously something I'm looking for in terms of a concern on the Wild end of things. Dane, if the Stars are going to win here tonight, what is going to be the biggest thing that helps them do that? What would be the biggest factor to a Stars win here this evening?
I think the biggest factor, and my listeners will know this, I feel like I've been harping on it over the past 2 games because Dallas is currently riding a 2-game winning streak, which I think 2 is the most that they've won in a row so far this season. So if they can win tonight, that'll, I think, be huge for their confidence. But I think what they need to do is something that they didn't do well at the start of the season, but are doing now, and that's just crashing the net. Whether that's sending the puck on the net, and just having guys there and creating a lot of chaos around the net, because that's how the Stars have found a lot of their goals recently, is confusing whoever's in the net, making them lose track of the puck and then sneaking it by them, or slipping it under them. So that's worked for Dallas so far. They've had some opportunities like that earlier on in the season, and they weren't hitting their shots. But I think now that whether it's through practices and a few roster moves that were made by the front office and the coaching staff, I think as of right now that Coach Rick Bowness really likes the guys that he has, at his disposal, and that he's kind of crafted his lines in a way where we have someone on the ice at all times that can facilitate things well, and guys that are going to be where they need to be in order to give Dallas the best chance to put the puck in the back of the net every time that they have an offensive opportunity.
I will say on the Wild side of things, if the team can get off to a good start in the first period and avoid falling into that 1 goal or 2 goal deficit right off the bat, that I think that will go a long way for this Wild team. The Wild have also shown the ability to bounce back after performances like they had against the San Jose Sharks, and so this team is fully capable of putting that sort of a game behind them. And so that, I think, is the biggest key for the Wild, is simply to just move on from the Sharks game and to get back to that complete game that we haven't quite seen yet this year. Beyond that, it'll be nice to see. Not sure exactly who's going to be in net for the Wild, but would like to see one of the goalies kind of step up and take charge of a game. And if we get that, I think the Wild have a good chance to come away with the win here tonight. Let's just go to final predictions. What is your what's your sense on what will happen here tonight? What are you thinking for a final score?
Ooh, I've been thinking on this ever since we agreed to do this crossover because it's been a challenge for me to think of because I know obviously, like you said, Minnesota coming off a tough loss to San Jose at home, right? That game was in Minnesota.
Yes.
So I know obviously they're gonna want to put that game behind them, but I think a team like you said with all the depth and veteran leadership, and just the talent they have on that team that they're going to come in ready to go, playing a division rival that they haven't seen in quite a long time. And so I feel like if Minnesota wins this game, it could very well be a 3-1, 4-1 affair. Whereas if Dallas wins, it'll be probably a little closer just because of the offensive inconsistency. But I also do think Dallas is in a really good place where they can win this game, and I think they really do need to win this game because after this one, they have St. Louis and Edmonton and Colorado in a pretty quick sequence, and so they need all the momentum they can get. But I could see Dallas winning this game, maybe 3-2, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this game go to overtime or a shootout.
Okay. I was thinking, right in that same area. I'm gonna go and say Wild 4-2 here in this one tonight. But as you said, would not surprise me at all if this game goes to overtime. The Wild have had plenty of those so far this year, so that wouldn't surprise me at all. I think we are in store for a good matchup between these two teams. Not going to shock me at all if Ryan Suter comes away with a goal against his former team because that's just how the cosmic energy works when a former Wild player plays the Wilds. There's always a point involved. So that wouldn't surprise me at all, but all in all, should be a great matchup between these two teams.
Yeah, I'm excited, and I know this is the first of several meetings this season, and hopefully it's a good first installment.
Absolutely. That's going to wrap it up for this crossover episode of Locked On Wild and Locked On Stars. So make sure now that your first listen is done for the day to check out the Locked On NHL podcast for a full recap of everything going on throughout the NHL every day. Make sure to follow Locked On Stars and Locked On Wild wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on social media. We are pretty active on all platforms, so make sure to check both shows out there. And you can stay as up to date as possible on both the Dallas Stars and the Minnesota Wild by keeping up with new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.